The Berea College Eco Village is located on the outskirts of campus to provide a close proximity to educational opportunities, as well as access to the jobs found in the greater Berea area. These opportunities continue to increase, and Berea is currently the fastest growing town in the state of Kentucky, with nearly a 44% population increase since the year 2000. A daycare facility is also located within the community to further enable young parents to continue their educational and employment needs. We would now like to ask for any questions about this livability principle.
Let's start here at the bottom of our list. Our first question in. Are mixed-use, dense, transit-oriented neighborhoods or centers more economically competitive than sprawled neighborhoods? And I would guess the follow-up for that would be, and how? Please, Mr. Sobel.
You can call me Lee.
Lee.
My answer would be a resounding yes. If you were at the Seattle Smart Growth Conference, I just presented material with 4 others in a session called the Market Acceptance for Smart Growth. And in it, myself, 2 academics, 1 market-based third-party real estate person, and one other person, Joe Courtwright, who did the walk score study for CEO for Cities. But all of us, using different methodologies, found a number of results that basically came to the same conclusion, which was 1, there are housing premiums generated in more mixed-use and walkable communities, and 2, tax valuations for property in terms of tax generation through property or retail sales tax also generated higher revenues for the city. And in doing this, we looked at all sorts of metrics. The academic looked at hedonic regression modeling for housing characteristics to see what characteristics were valued most by third-party transactions. I looked at compound annual growth rate over long-term resales in smart growth communities. James Holm from the Prince's Foundation in England looked at pounds per square hectare and pounds per square build-out unit to see over time how sustainable communities competed against both conventional communities and existing neighborhoods in London. I mentioned Joe Courtwright did a walk score where he compared, if you're not familiar, there's a website called walkscore.com. It's very simple. You plug in an address, and through their own metrics, they tell you how walkable it is. Joe Cartwright is an economist who looked at the difference between scoring and found that the housing prices differed as much between $3,000 and $7,000 per point score difference. So the answer is yes. I think housing and mixed-use communities actually generate a higher market value. An excellent example would be most downtowns or walkable areas typically have more expensive housing or higher retail, and that is in spite of the fact that you get less square footage typically to purchase one of the units to live there than you would out in more of a drivable or auto-centric community. So I think there's a lot of economic competitiveness already embedded within mixed-use development. Go ahead.
I'd like to just add on to that also. When we're thinking about economic development and livability, you know, the big questions that you really want to answer are, do people want to work there and do people want to live there? So, you know, the components of the mixed use, of the, you know, revitalization center are really, really important. And what the good news is that there is research being done so that you can identify what those components are. So if you want to have an area that you're looking to revitalize economically, you want it to be mixed use, you want it to be mixed income, you want it to be intergenerational. You need to look at, like, you know, okay, so your visioning process says, all right, we want people to be able to ride bikes. Well, research will show you who will ride bikes if you only put a bike lane versus who will ride bikes if you create bike boulevards. So if you don't know those terms, it doesn't matter. The point being that the answer is yes, and the answer also is the components matter. So you need to find out what those components are.
And I would just add to Sarah's point, that answers Gil's question of how do you have mixed-use development? You can have all the mixed-use development or compact or density you want, but until you have places that are beautiful, interesting, and satisfy the needs of consumers, residences, employers, and visitors, you won't really have the how. What Sarah is pointing out is the how.
Are there ways through you that we can encourage that? We can encourage, I saw on there, urban infill. What can we do more proactively to help that out? Are there more specifics we can get into on those?
Well, as was mentioned before, the new market tax credit is an excellent way of looking for sources of financing for underserved markets. There is TIF dollars, which is tax increment financing, which is used to revitalize existing neighborhoods where you bond out future value of the property to receive incomes. The corollary to TIF financing is what's called PACE financing, which is almost like an energy bond that does the same thing. You can find information about that through Berkeley, California, where they've pretty much created that. There really are a whole bunch of investment metrics to do that.
I'm going to take a question from the crowd here. I'm going to hold on to it.
Thank you. I have a question. If we look at a scenario where you do have these smart growth techniques working, and we do increase property values, what sort of techniques can be used to make sure that low-income families and low-income individuals don't get forced out of these dense urban areas?
That's a great question. We have to deal with that all the time, and a lot of communities have already dealt with that. The community that I moved to when I came to Washington, D.C. was Rockville in Montgomery County. Montgomery County has had the first inclusionary housing ordinance within their zoning code that requires projects of over a certain size, I think it's either acreage or unit, I'm not sure, to actually have 10.5%, 9.5% of the units be inclusionary housing, which is affordable housing at 80% median income value. The city of Rockville has actually increased that by 2.5% if you build in Rockville, and Montgomery County has just approved what they call a workforce housing, which actually adds, I think, 2 more percentage number of units for workforce housing, which is a different median income average for, essentially the people we rely on during the day to either educate our kids or take care of us, whether we're sick or we need assistance or police help or fire help or things like that. The city of Miami Beach has actually done things. We think of Miami Beach being this great posh or some sort of eclectic community, but it still has old retirees, it still has immigrants who live there because the city has actually gone in and either bought units or provided incentives for redevelopment and traded through freezing out units to keep them affordable so the people who've always lived there can continue to participate in the revitalization of those communities.
What are any other agencies? Sarah's going to comment.
Thomas Edison has this great quote that says, "Opportunity is often missed because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work." And the issue with gentrification or displacement due to economic redevelopment is a real important one. And at the Smart Growth Conference that a couple of people have mentioned that happened in Seattle, there was a real push to incorporate this conversation into the broader smart growth kind of sustainable development conversation, which was great to hear. I just wanted to mention something that is used through the public health community to help identify the risks that you're looking at when you're doing economic redevelopment. The health impact assessment framework that I mentioned a little earlier has been used specifically. One example I just want to mention is it was used in the Bay Area. The San Francisco's Department of Public Health